Hey, this is Rob Anspach, and welcome to the 150th episode of eHeroes Podcast. Now, my next guest, totally awesome person, makes it a priority to shape the battlefield every day by helping soldiers from all branches of the U.S. military. I'm humbled and honored to have Jocelyn Stewart on the show. Welcome.
Thanks, Rob. Thank you for having me.
You know, I watched your podcast, Helping the Brave, and it really brought a tear to my eye because the fact is that, you do so much to help U.S. soldiers, not only, when they get into jam, but now this new service that you're creating helps them after they get out of the service. And it's just incredible.
Oh, thank you so much. It's certainly something that means a lot to me and has for a very long time.
But, for those that don't know, Jocelyn is a lawyer in Tacoma. She specializes in helping military soldiers. And I believe that you always wanted to be a lawyer of some sort.
That's true. Right. I think my first declaration came when I was 5, and I told my family that I was going to be a judge. And with a lot of evidence, my dad convinced me that to be a judge, I had to be a lawyer first. So begrudgingly, I said, okay, fine. I'll have to go to law school first.
So you went to law school, and then you went and served in the military, and or was it the other way?
So a little bit of both, right? So initially, I accepted an appointment to go to West Point, and I was there for a brief time before I got sick, actually. And I left there on a medical separation, but soon after, just really kept after it and was able to get an ROTC scholarship and get a medical waiver so that I could come in and serve. But then once I was serving, I learned that there was a program that would allow me potentially to kind of take a pause after commissioning. Instead of going straight on after duty, I could go to law school on my own dime, which is what I opted for. It was called an educational delay. So I had some training and commissioned before law school, but did not have an obligation until after I completed law school, and then came back in and was accepted into the JAG Corps, because it wasn't an automatic thing. I had to apply and kind of sweat it out, because they could have sent me basically into any branch and not even allow me to sit for the bar exam. So I would have a degree that I wouldn't really be able to use. So it definitely was important to me to be able to come back in and serve my time as an attorney.
But now that you have your own firm, do you look back and think, wow, some of that bull crap that I had to put up with really taught me some lessons?
Oh, absolutely. There's no doubt. I think, for anyone who's in a job where persuasion matters, right, where you have to convince people why they should go with your side, even when they're not necessarily playing nicely or being the most congenial, being able to kind of reflect. And I don't think I learned that until much later, actually. I don't think it came until maybe when I was serving at Fort Hood as a defense attorney there. And I think what enabled me to see it, honestly, was an attorney who was working in the office next to me, and kind of watching the way that she approached things in sort of this, I'm always right, and I'm going to scream at you until you adhere to me, which really wasn't a very effective tool of persuasion. And I even kind of tried to coach her a little bit and say, hey, even if you are 100% right, that person's not going to hear you, right? They're not going to receive what you're saying if you're coming at them and just yelling at them. So yeah, definitely learned how to deal with some of that and be able to reflect it in a different way from my youth, for sure.
Having friends and my own son being in the military, I think the biggest thing that the military teaches is patience with the whole concept of hurry up and wait. And I can see that being an attorney in the military would just drive me crazy. The rules and regulations, I think I'd quit. But you don't do that. I mean, you just continue on and you press and I mean that's what really impresses me about you, because you don't give up. And I don't think you've ever had that I'm going to quit attitude.
No, for sure. And I'll tell you that the frustration that I feel at times with the system not moving what I would say as quickly enough or as efficiently enough is certainly reflected more so because I realize the impact that it has on my clients. I remember one case in particular, and I can't imagine, right? I've never been on trial for a crime, and so I can only try to empathize as best I can with my clients. But imagining and putting myself in their shoes, that last week or that last 2 weeks as you're amping up for trial must be the most stressful, right? I mean, the whole process is stressful, but as you're getting closer, and then you're also sort of looking forward to at least a resolution, good, bad, or ugly. At least I'm going to get an answer. I'm going to be able to move on with my life. And I had one case that reset 4 times within, a less than a week before trial. And it just was torture. Even that last time when we were gearing up for trial, he didn't believe, right? He didn't even believe that we were going to get there because he thought something's going to derail it. Something else is going to come on. He had a really deep faith. I think that's really what kind of carried him through, but absolutely. I think it comes across probably in my blog when I'm frustrated at the system. That's kind of my place to vent. I used to joke that there were only 2 people who read it, me and my mom. But from what I understand, it's gotten a little more viewership. So, but that's definitely my place to kind of vent that.
Yeah, and I think you and I go back and forth sometimes on blogs and how they should be set up, and your style's a little different, but you have a good readership, and people will comment and they'll look at it and they'll vent their frustrations back to you, and to me that is the best way to connect with your audience, and because not only are you telling a story, but you're sharing with them your deep down frustrations in a system that helped you become who you are.
Right. I think what's meant the most in and of itself of just creating a space where I can share my ideas and talk about hot topics that are kind of going on and what I'm doing. What's meant a great deal to me is that for the viewers or for the readers who are in my industry, um, the best compliment you can ever receive is a referral, right? I know you talk a lot about referrals, and I receive so many as a result of it for people to say, a deep, friend or a long commander that they've advised reaches out and says, "Hey, I'm in a jam," and they said, "There's only one person, there's only one person I would call, and it's Jocelyn," and that's just that feels really good to be able to reach people in that way as well.
Well, you've in the decade that you've been doing this, you have created a what's the word, an authority, and people respect you. People reach out to you. They want the best, and you drop everything to help people. I mean, I think you should be a saint, but there's no money in sainthood. So
No, I appreciate that a great deal. And I think there definitely was a time when I did literally drop everything, when work was the only thing that really centered me. I think, though, in the last several years, I'm a little more proud that I won't drop just and that I have placed appropriate boundaries around my work balance, if there is such a thing. I still feel really passionately about the things that I'm doing, but I'm making sure that I'm taking care of myself so that I can be in this for the long haul.
and part of taking care of yourself is switching over to paid consultation.
Ah, here we go.
You
One
were
of our
waiting.
backs and forth, right? Now, I've really struggled with it, especially in the last year or so, because people who I greatly respect are paid only consultations, and I see that as what I would aspire to, because I know and I recognize that my time is valuable. It has, it's very finite. I only have so much of it. The worry always is, especially because of the industry that I'm in, and because there are soldiers who don't make a whole lot of money, but who I think really could benefit from from my experience, maybe that one phone call is really all they need, right? Just to kind of nudge them in that right direction. And so I do still feel a sense of responsibility of service and community. And so I have not switched over quite yet to all paid consultations, but there are a few of the areas that I do require a fee, and that's because the military, provides very effective baseline type of advice when it comes to non-judicial punishment, Article 15s, otherwise known as Captain's Mast for the Navy and the Marine Corps. So if those folks want to chat in particular, I think it's important that they have some buy-in, that they have, because it is so, and especially during COVID, I was getting just inundated with calls where they hadn't bothered, or not I say bothered. Later, it's been they haven't bothered to go down to the base office, but for a while, they just weren't receiving advice as quickly as they would want. They were a little bit, and they had no inclination that they were ever going to need to hire an attorney. They just wanted their answer when they wanted it. And so my frustration in that is, well, I'm not the base, right? The base offers you these services. And so if that's what you're going to need, that's what you need to go and find. And it wasn't my job to kind of keep that running. I see that happen a lot during the summer changeover, and we're seeing that now because there's just not as much availability that people will just sort of, 1-800 call a lawyer. Right. And that's definitely not what we're here for. I mean, we're here to help, but we're here to do, and I say this all the time, we want to be where we can do the most good. And me acting as, a pointer outer of free resources is just not really the most effective way that I think I can be spending my time.
But they come to you because of the information that you provide on your website, on your videos. They believe that you're the go-to person, and that's great. We all love that stuff. But they're coming from an area where it gives them very little communication. The military is this big system, but most of the soldiers don't know where to go. So they
Right.
reach out for you because that's you're putting that information out there.
Right. And one of the things I need to definitely kind of fine tune on the site is to indicate that when folks are trying to sign up for that level of consultation, that just sort of signpost that tells them, hey, if this is what you need, this is the number where you need to call. And if you aren't getting, I did this up in Alaska because to my frustration, if the main office isn't answering your line, here's the number to the guy in charge. Suddenly, all of a sudden, those calls started getting answered. I don't think they appreciated me giving out the supervisor's phone number, but, answer your phone. I'm not here to do it for you. So.
Yeah, we all have these phones. Everybody's carrying pocket computers nowadays, and yet nobody uses them the right way anyway. So.
Right. Yep. Right. No, for sure.
Give them the right information the first time, and I mean, my whole Rob versus series is based on frustrations that I have with customer service and scammers, and your frustration is the military complex, which to me is they could do things so much better.
Right. And I think COVID presented a lot of challenges to a lot of systems, but they managed to adapt and overcome, and those calls are definitely decreasing. So we're encouraged by that.
Let's talk about your newest form of communication, which is your book series. It's to me, it's fascinating because not only are you helping the industry, but you're helping the next generation of lawyers who want to be just like you.
No, I thank you. It's funny because the first one was something that I worked on and off for several years. I'd pick it up, I'd put it down. I was so busy with the cases that I had, but I have become frustrated with what I call legal whack-a-mole, right? The one case pops up, I do my best to help that person, and 5 more allegations spring up in their stead. I'm only one person. I can't save the world. I can't take every case. But one thing that I can do is to try to use the time and the energy that I have to try to make other people who are in a position to do what I do that much better at what they're doing. It helps me to feel better about making bigger change than just sort of dealing with the one case that pops up and that frustration. I think I'm an efficiency junkie. Inefficiency drives me absolutely batty. And so the idea that, if I can put something out there that is a resource, I can give a talk, I can give I'm invited sometimes to come down to the local base and give, some training to those counsel, but those counsel are on those positions for maybe 18 months, maybe 2 years if they're lucky. And the next ones are going to be coming by. But at least if I've got that written resource that's there, that's going to continue with the lessons that I've built up over, the last 17 plus years, then I think that's really invaluable.
Now, you had mentioned Alaska, but you're out of Tacoma. And I know that you used to travel to Germany. Have you been all over the world, or is it just within the confines of certain cases?
For the last, or at least for the first, I would say 6 or 7 years of my practice, I went where the cases took me. I was in Korea, I was in Japan, I was in Germany. I really was all over the United States. It didn't matter where they were. I definitely considered myself to be available worldwide, and I think that was really important in establishing the practice that I have. But in kind of reassessing, there were days I'd be on the road 32, 33 days consecutively. I'd wake up in another time zone and ask myself, okay, where am I? And what am I supposed to do today? It just was, it was grueling. And I know a lot of my colleagues out there are still doing that kind of travel and that level of varied practice. I feel very grateful that I made the decision not to do that, although it's definitely been hard on a few select occasions. Turning away, not turning away, but giving out cases to the folks here in my firm. Hey guys, Merry Christmas. You get to go to Italy. There've definitely been a few, even after I had opened up my branch office in Anchorage and left there, the winters there are so grueling that I set a boundary around Alaska, and I said, oh, be careful what you say, right? I said, I'll never go back to Alaska. Well, one of the things I feel most passionately about is false confession cases where the authorities will use trickery and psychologically coercive tactics to get people to say things that they really didn't do. And I got a call from a gentleman out of Fort Wainwright, Alaska, and he had essentially given false admissions to a sexual assault that occurred 5 years before when he was a cadet at West Point, and had significant traumatic brain injury, and just had no recollection. But he was there with the police for so long that he made these admissions. And I said, you know what? I don't care. You're in like probably the worst place in the world. Fort Wainwright, Alaska is not my favorite place to be in the dead of winter. And I packed up my things and I went. I was grateful to be able to do that. And he walked away from that experience, vindicated, and they realized he hadn't done anything wrong. And hopefully highlighted for a few agents that maybe they need to be screening for TBI before they start inundating somebody with those kind of tactics.
Have you ever gotten to the point where the opposing side says, oh my goodness, it's Jocelyn Stewart, we give up, just no?
I can't imagine that exact conversation has happened. I'm sure there's lots of groans. In fact, I know there are. A good friend of mine, we weren't super close at the time, but he came into an office at Fort Hood, and anytime he would announce that one of their new cases was going to me, there was this collective, not Stewart, which he shared with me later. And, he was a little suspicious of me, like, who is this, who's causing all this consternation? Maybe she's, dirty. Maybe she's up to no good. And I had a hearing where I was representing a client, and they were trying to decide whether or not she should stay in pretrial confinement. And I remember the day he showed up, because I didn't know him at all. We laugh about it now, but he showed up and he's kind of looking at me sideways, right? Like, who are you? And, he told me later that he realized it was just that I made them work, right? It was that I did my job, and I was going to make them dot their I's and cross their T's. So I don't know if I've had anybody give up. I think there's probably lots of groaning that goes on when they find out I'm on a case. And I'm okay with it. I'm totally fine with that.
Talk about this new venture, the VA claim defender part. What's it about, and how can it benefit more soldiers?
Sure. So, I am definitely among the population of people who has hesitated to file for a VA claim. I don't know if it was the way I was raised, where I came from, this idea that I shouldn't be maybe looking for a handout. I think there was a lot of shame for me personally. But in looking at everything that I've been through in my service and realizing that no, it's not a handout, it's compensation, right? For having been justly hurt in the line of my duty, that this is something that is there, that my country says that I'm entitled to, and why should I not have shame in that? So as I've started to go through my own process of filing that claim, realizing how hard it is, how many impediments, how many roadblocks there are, and just even understanding the process. Well, this is crazy. I'm a licensed attorney now in 2 states. Why am I having so many issues? I can't fathom the issues that soldiers and sailors and airmen and Marines must be having also. And by happenstance, it's been something I've thought about maybe branching into. I've always made the joke, I'm an old dog. I don't want to learn any new tricks. But seeing that there is such a need for zealous advocacy in this area, and realizing that I have, I'm situated in a place to be able to help and to know veterans in that way. A friend made a connection, right? It's all about forging those connections with people, and said, hey, I have this friend who's left a bigger firm who does this. He does VA claims. He's done it for many years. He's very gifted in it. Do you think you want to have a chat? Sure. And in making that connection, I'm just elated that we're going to join forces, and that he's come on board, and we're moving forward to help soldiers and everyone with their VA claims.
Yeah, it's great to hear that somebody wants to take a stance, because, and I know that a lot of people do this, but you have personal history, you have the connections. I've seen so many friends who don't want to file because they're either stubborn, the paperwork is daunting, but now they have an advocate. They can turn to you, and you have the resources to help them get the compensation. And sometimes it's thousands of dollars that they could actually help, with their lifestyle.
Right, exactly. So many people who take that first step to even apply, if they have help or not, are leaving, people in the industry use the expression, they're leaving money on the table, right? They don't recognize that a certain event that happened can be service connected. They don't understand why it might be a higher percentage that they really should be entitled to. And so the VA claims appeals process is especially critical, because you really don't have too many bites at that apple. And so you want to make sure that you're doing it with someone who really knows. I feel like I'm learning, certainly, and Cameron is teaching me, and I almost feel like he's got a quasi medical degree based off of all of his knowledge and experience about what he can reach out and what he can really make those arguments that are service connected, and why those percentages need to be higher. The dollar figures that he's been able to obtain on behalf of his clients is just astronomical.
Yeah.
Astronomical.
And I think that it's actually better to hire an attorney that's experienced in this than try to do it yourself, because the mountain of paperwork, the mountain of information that you have to obtain, not only from the military but from your physicians and everything else, I think it would drive the average human crazy, and I think that's why they don't do it.
Right. And what I think another reason why there's an impediment to it is that attorneys are actually prevented, get this, attorneys are prevented from collecting any fee for that initial filing of the claim. Only free advocacy groups can do that. Where attorneys like us can become involved in a meaningful way is, and I think this is part of the problem with the system, which I'd like to see change. But as of right now, the status quo is that attorneys can only become involved to assist in that retaining process once they've either been denied or once they've received the answer to their claim, their decision, but it wasn't high enough. We can only really become involved in that appeals process. Otherwise, it's free advocacy groups who have good intentions, but certainly I would tend to believe, and I can't speak for all of them, that there's going to be more of an incentive if that attorney or that team that's involved is going to receive compensation themselves.
Mm-hmm.
I hate to say it, but I think that's just the way the world works.
Yeah. Do you find that the military is getting better or worse since you left? In not only education, but in health of the soldier or the overall well-being of the soldier themselves?
That's an interesting question. I think in many facets, they're certainly trying to do better. I think, you know, depending on your frame of reference, what means the most to you. I know certainly a lot of people have been, and women especially, have been more appreciative that lately the grooming standards have changed. Women don't have to wear the tight bun, which always gave me a headache. They can actually wear a ponytail, which I still have a hard time seeing. I feel like jumping out at people and correcting them because it's just not something that a world I grew up in. I think that there is earnest effort to really caretake to the well-being of the person who's serving. But I think many of those efforts have then actually resulted in the detriment of the force, right? There's so much emphasis on taking care of people that there's also sort of become this sense of entitlement that I don't think that I felt when I served. Starting off at 17 years old, I would have never had some of the grumblings that some people have, and to a point where there are now people who are certainly taking advantage of that desire to caretake and desire to take care of people by, I don't like to do this. Well, I'm going to file a claim against my commander and I'm going to take that person out. It's unreal the way that the word of one person, or if they get their buddy to do it too, can take out a commander, can take out a head of, their department, can take out, and it's being done across the board in a lot of different facets and by a lot of different people because of that renewed focus on the individual. Any complaint is going to be accepted, wholeheartedly believed, and that person who had the complaint against them is now, their name is trash. So I think that the heart is in the right place, but kind of where we're headed and where the military is headed is unfortunate.
And I think that social media plays a big factor in some of these things when it comes to military, because they think they have this voice and they can broadcast it to the world, but they're still in uniform. And I think they forget that. I really do think that the soldiers forget who they're actually working for.
Right. And I've seen it kind of play out in a multitude of ways on social media. I've seen certainly what you're speaking to, that the folks who don't realize that, as members of the armed forces, they automatically will speak for more than just who they are individually. And then I've also seen, the bullying side of social media where people will go after someone and the military has in turn created a series of infractions that, you can't cyberbully, you can't do these things on social media. They've been written in such a vague way that I'm surprised anyone in the military feels free to comment on anything from a social media perspective, because almost single thing I can imagine that they would do would technically be a violation. Then it becomes a matter of, do you have a target on your back? And is there somebody out there who is watching to see the things that you're putting on there? Because now maybe they're going to go after you and highlight it, even though there's probably 20,000 other people who've said worse, right? It becomes selective targeting. And honestly, again, heart in the right place, right? We want to make sure that people aren't being bullied and aren't being ostracized or alienated in this very powerful platform, but to the point where now it's just another opportunity for somebody to go after you.
Yeah. My buddy is a former Navy SEAL, and he actually removed himself from social media because he became a target. They were, these foreign actors were going after former SEALs. And they were using Facebook because back then you could just type in anything, Navy SEAL, and your profile would pull up. Well, basically they can do that with every American soldier out there now. And I think Facebook has limited some of that searchability, but they can still find you.
Well, not only that, and I think you and I have even discussed this before, but there are so many fake profiles out there for people who are posing.
Right.
I have been targeted because of my position Accounts are created to make it appear that it's a very senior person, a general, an admiral, etc. It's fake account. I'm largely, abreast of that and very cognizant and wary, but they love to pretend. And I think I've turned over 5 different accounts to the law enforcement on the basis where these people serve, because I think it's important that if they're going to be, if someone's impersonating them, that needs to be investigated. Now, whether or not that's actually, happened, and they always think it's interesting that I'm the one sending it, but inevitably this person will be posing, they'll send me a private message. It ends up usually being rather harassing and has nothing to do with any need that they have. There's a lot of widows in Afghanistan, incidentally. Always be wary of those. Like, really? Do people actually fall for this? But as you well know, in your Rob versus series, people do fall for stuff all the time.
All the time. Yeah, it just people have no common sense anymore. So what do you do for fun? Because I mean, you're always defending soldiers, you're educating soldiers, you're writing books, you're posting on social. Do you even have a life outside of all this?
For a long time, I didn't, really, and it's kind of sad. I remember, years ago, I went to the Trial Lawyers College when it was still at the ranch in Wyoming, and I remember Josh Carton, who's this really impressive writer, actor, director out of Hollywood who helps people to find their voice, and he does a lot of jury consultation and all magical things. He does magical things. We were doing this exercise, and he asked me, what gives you joy? And I'm in front of 50 people, or at least 40, and I was frozen. And I thought, God, how humiliating is this that I can't think of something that brings me joy? And I kind of vowed, I'm going to find my joy, right? Like I've been through a lot, and I've overcome a lot, and that certainly doesn't need to be the focus of this, but in those moments, it's like, okay, I can't work myself into the grave, right? I think I had always had this image of me being someone who was going to die at my desk or die in the courtroom, right? I imagined it was going to be at my desk in response to a prosecutor email that was just going to, give me an aneurysm, because so many of them almost do. But so now I make it a point to find my joy, right? So I I don't work on Thursdays. If I can, unless I've got a judge, somebody significant telling me otherwise. But I carve out my Thursdays, and I admitted, as you saw on the last podcast, that I watch absolute trash television, because I need an outlet to be able not to think, to be able to get out of my head, because otherwise my mind is going over kind of the constant problem solving. Okay, my client's accused of this. What is it about this that doesn't make sense? What investigative tools can I use to try to, to go other places? The other thing that I forgot, of course, to mention and on the last podcast, but I will tell you, I I sing, right? So COVID hit. I'm too reserved, I guess, to go out and karaoke in public, but I bought this ridiculously expensive karaoke, speaker and microphone for my kids, right? Would barely use it, and it's just mom's outlet, right? And right now I'm teasing them incessantly because I talk about mom's summer concert series. I'm going to put the machine on my front porch and project it to all of the neighbors. I said, come on guys, we can take requests. And they're like dying down and hiding under the seat at the thought of mom doing it. But I sing, and I miss singing in church. That was a big part of my life, and now that we're getting back into being able to go to church in person, that's something that certainly gives me a lot of joy too.
So we should set up a YouTube for the Jocelyn's karaoke.
I don't think you'd get much followership, although maybe some of my unfans would like it and pass it around. But it's fun, and at least I know there's a couple of songs that I can play that will kind of fan favorites and will get the group kind of going. But usually it's just mom singing.
But you also like hiking, and you like doing all kinds of different things.
No, for sure.
And I think that's it kind of gets you out of that superhero mode where you're trying to help everybody, and now you're just helping yourself. And And I think it goes back to your book. You're shaping the battlefield for others, but you're also shaping that battlefield for yourself, so that you can have this law firm that basically gives you the lifestyle that you want. That it's you're not overwhelmed. And it took you a while to do that, but I think now you can say, well, these are the days I'm taking off. This is what I'm charging. This is who I'm. And a lot of entrepreneurs that are listening to this probably are in that boat where they're working, 12-hour days, 7 days a week, giving out free consultations, and they're going, what am I doing? And it took you a little while to figure it all out, but you shaped your battlefield just like you are, helping others do it themselves.
I feel incredibly fortunate to be able to be in a space where I can decide where I'm going to put my energy. I definitely went through those years of, when you go, especially I think when you go from the comfort of the 1st and the 15th, right? That steady paycheck, you're working for the government, you're doing that, it's there. Essentially, no matter how well you perform, it's there. But someone who was in my life at the time reminded me and said, Jocelyn, you're never going to make what you're worth if you stay in the military,
Right.
because it caters to that sort of common denominator. And everyone has served alongside of the folks who really are marginal performers, who are actually better at getting out of work than they are at doing the work. And they get paid the same, as the people who are bearing the brunt of the work. So when I turned to private practice, it just, that unease of not knowing, how many cases am I going to get? How many paying clients am I going to get? You have to, especially, in the digital age. I had this sort of notion that when I first started off, very naive, that if I was the best at what I did, and if I worked the hardest at it, I was going to get clients. And we all know as entrepreneurs, that's really not necessarily the case. There are plenty of folks out there who are pretty terrible at what they do. But if they have the right, search engine optimization, they get a lot of cases. They don't get a lot of repeat business, right? But they get that initial. So for me, I remember that, just living scared, right? And I also remember very much not wanting to suffer sort of that humiliation of, I've gone out on my own, I've put myself out there, I've been vulnerable by saying, here I am. And my baseline was I wanted to make 10% more than what I had made on active duty. Then I sort of felt like, at least for myself, I could justify that choice, right? And say, I didn't make a mistake. It was okay for me to do this. I took a chance on myself, and it worked. But again, those first 5 years, I was driving myself into the ground. And I even, a big firm, what I kind of call one of the mills, reached out to me. And by that point, I had reached a certain level of success. And so one of their headhunters was, I think, really trying to see, could he kind of scoop me up for not much, and to become part of the mill, and starts asking me questions about how much I'm making and what do I charge. And I, I took the call because, from an early age, my parents instilled in me this idea that you don't ever overlook an opportunity. Right? Don't ever be so arrogant as to think there's not something else out there, right? Be humble. I think that's a really critical lesson for anybody, even, especially in the service industry. So I took the call, even though I was feeling really good about where I was in my job and where things were heading. And as he starts asking me these questions I was never going to answer, I just said, I'm not sure how you think this call is going to go, but it's not going to go that way. Is there something else I can help you with? And they were super offended. I felt like, I took a call with the head of the firm, and I turned down a position. There was sort of this enticement of, you're a great trial attorney for military cases, but you're never going to make a whole lot unless you convert and do civil litigation. And we will, bring you on, and with these sort of nebulous promises of recruiting you for that civil litigation. And I just very politely said, I'm kind of a one-trick pony. This is what I do. I think that it's important that I specialize. I think that's part of why I am as effective as I am, because I'm dedicated to staying current. And that did not make those individuals very happy. I ended up later getting this like bizarre demand letter. This is kind of funny. So I found out that firm soon after started targeting my name on Google and was bidding on my name, so that if you Googled my name, it went to a very deceptive landing page that was part of their firm. And it was trying to make it seem like I was a part of their firm, which of course I wasn't. So being snarky as I am on social media, I posted something to the effect of, if you're out there and you're bidding on my name, you might just find your, whole ad spend gone in a couple of days. Click, 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 right? And so a lot of people reached out. Who is it? What are they doing? We want to click, all of that. And it really ticked them off. So I got this demand letter about wanting like $50,000 because they said I violated some antitrust act. And so I'm getting all these frantic calls from my colleagues in the industry who also got these demand letters, and I said, guys, take a breath. Like, did we commit an antitrust violation, or did I make a stupid remark on social media that, anyway, so we ignored it. Nothing happened. Wow. And life goes on. So yeah, long-winded way, right? You ask a lawyer a question, you're going to get like 12 different answers. But I feel very fortunate that I'm now in a place to not have to just take anything and everything that comes my way, and that I've got this team of warriors, who are operating under my name and can go out and can fill those needs. It's not like I have to, turn them down outright. I've got a group of folks who are well able to go out and to be doing that help. So it feels great.
And over the last few years, I've watched, and you went from just a few people, now you have this huge team, and it's amazing. You stuck to your guns, you grew the business, and now you're just well known in the industry, and you're making waves, and that's what it's all about.
No, I'm really proud of the team that we have assembled. I definitely had interest sooner, but I've got really high picky standards, especially when you're going to be operating in my name. I think some of my clients are sometimes surprised at how little, if any, I allow the Uniform Military Council to do when I come on a case. But as I try to explain to everybody, it's my name, right? And it just takes that one time to lose it. I think reputations are really gained over a long period of time, but so easily lost, and it's just not something I'm willing to compromise on.
Yeah, and that's what makes you an e-hero in my book. Now, how do people, especially those that are listening, if you're a current soldier or a former soldier that needs help, where do they go?
So the best place to go is the ucmj-defender.com/schedule, which thankfully you've made easier for folks.
I'll put it down in the link, and you guys can just click away.
Right. As part of my effort to be the most efficient, we have switched over to a system that allows people to get direct access by attorney, by matter, to be able to see our calendars and to schedule directly with us. They receive an email confirming it. We receive the email, and then we link up when it's convenient for both parties.
And and also cuts down on spam. And when you put someone in a direct schedule configuration, it makes them decide, okay, is this right for me? And if all they want to do is spam you, they're not going to go through that process. If they really want you, they're going to fill it out. They're going to give you the information. And to me, that's the ultimate way of pre-qualifying people.
Right. It also helps us to identify, is it the right fit for the client? Is it the right fit for the firm? It's always a red flag for me when we have loved ones who schedule on behalf of folks. Now, sometimes that's absolutely necessary because their loved one is already incarcerated and they're looking for our assistance on a court-martial appeal. But for the person who's doing the day-to-day and they're under investigation and they're not necessarily coming to terms with that, when that loved one is the one who schedules for them, it's often a red flag for us that maybe they're just not in an emotional place to be that very, very critical part of their own defense team. I say it a lot, especially when I was in uniform. there were many cases where I cared a whole lot more about the case than the client did. And again, understanding empathy and understanding that it just was just more than they could really bear at the time. Now being on this side of things where I get to choose where we're going to put our energy, I can't. I can't care more about somebody's case than they do because it's too exhausting, and it doesn't do anybody any good. And it's just a frustrating process for all concerned.
And if you're a future lawyer, I highly recommend the whole series. I mean, there's going to be more, but right now there's Shaping the Battlefield, and she's coming out with Shaping the Battlefield 2 and writing book 3 and probably 20 books in the whole series.
And it's been well received. That's felt really good. I remember having sort of that moment of, okay, I was going to do this and I was so proud I was going to do this. And then sort of went, oh my gosh, people are going to read this. And like, again, that vulnerability of putting yourself out there and saying, look at me. Cause I'll tell you that even in starting my practice, when there was a time when I went back and people found out I was in the reserve component because I was teaching at the criminal law and trial advocacy at the JAG school, I actually had someone come up to me and say, oh, okay, so your firm failed, so you had to come back on active duty, huh? And I thought, whoa. I was like, no, I'm actually just here as a reservist, but thank you for your faith in me. And kind of walked away and realized that there really are people out there for whatever their own personal reasons who don't necessarily want to see everyone succeed, which, I think it makes me sad for them. But that moment when you put a book out and you're like, oh gosh, the haters are going to read it, right? People are going to have comments, but you know what? For every hater, I hope there's 3 people who get something out of it, even if it's a 1-to-1 ratio.
And I know that you had some content. You were very nervous about putting your photo out there, but that's become your brand. That people can recognize you now, who you are, and are like, oh yeah, I got to hire her. And I was never one to put my own image on my books until the whole Rob versus series, and I became a narcissist, and I had to just put it out there.
Well, I don't think you became a narcissist, and hopefully people see me as one. But it was, as we were going kind of back and forth on what needed to be that front page, I think I was trying to get you to let me do it on the inside, on a bio cover, on a bio page kind of a thing. And just sort of said, okay, you know what? I'm a trial attorney, right? I don't hide behind a desk. I don't write briefs when I'm up in front of a jury. It's me. It's making that personal connection. And you did rightly convince me that was the move to make.
And I think that's you spent your whole life making that personal connection. So, having that image out there just proves to people that you are the welcoming person. You're there to help them. And like you said, you're where you need to be to do the most good.
Right. No, and it feels really good too. I just shared with you, I think before we started recording, that I started book 3 last night, and that feels really good too. I'm coming right off of a trial, and so for me, it's really fresh. The book that's going to be coming out is a really close corollary to the first book, which is going to be, now that you know how to write these motions, how are you going to litigate them, right? What's my checklist, and how do I kind of go about this in a very systematic way? But another way that I feel exceptionally drawn to the work is being able to forge those personal connections with the panel members, the jury members, the people who are going to sit in judgment of my client. And you do that through what I kind of call bookended ways, right? The first way is when you're selecting them, right? When you're talking to them, when you're vetting them, and you're trying to identify, is this the right fit for my case? Are they in the right frame of mind? Do they have the right personal background? Do they have the right experiences to be open to listening to my side? And then on the tail end of that, at the very end, when they're going to decide the fate of my client, how are they being instructed? What are their blueprint, right, that the judge is going to give them in those instructions? And so that's why, even though maybe it seems a little odd, why I'm putting those 2 topics together, because I see them as interrelated, and I see them often as being trial strategies and trial skills that people kind of push to the back end, especially government counsel. They kind of see them as more of an afterthought. And I think that they're so critical in shaping the battlefield of trying to get that victory.
So there you go. Everybody, go rush Jocelyn. No, one at a time. Anyway, that's all we have for today. Thanks for listening. And as always, hope you learned something. And please visit Jocelyn on her ucmga-defender.com and then schedule. So adios, and we'll see you on the next episode.